as a woman and a men's rights activist, I think that everyone in general just needs to have more passion for each other, more understanding, because feminism in general, I feel like, has really divided a lot. And it's really sad to see, because I, I really feel that we used to be closer as a society, more community oriented. And when you make the community only about who you want to be in that community, like women, minorities, etc., LGBT, it's like this, that's great that you're lifting them up, but you cannot exclude men who want to support you. It's like men being in spaces with other people encourages them to learn about them. So when you exclude them, push them out, it just divides them more. And honestly, probably creates more sexism, more, just disdain and anger towards that community, which doesn't help anyone.
How did you become a non-feminist woman? What is your history with feminism?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, actually, it was about 2012. Um, Obama was running again for president. Everybody was talking about like what kind of things he stood for, and I was really supportive at the time, because he said, I'm for women's rights, I'm for gay rights. I said, yeah, that sounds great. So when I started talking to other girls, not really in my grade, but in the grade lower than me, they really just gave off this very pro-woman, anti-man vibe in general. And then when I started researching and really looking into like what they're actually fighting for as far as like women's rights, it was stuff like the wage gap and just equality in general. And when I found out that the wage gap was kind of manipulated to make it seem like women literally earned 77 cents for every man's dollar hourly, like that's kind of how all the women that I interacted with assumed that it was, when it's actually the amount worked, the different jobs worked, there's a ton of different factors.
Right.
So that first, kind of led me down the path of like, maybe this isn't quite what I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started looking into equality and inequality for men. And, I learned about what circumcision can do to infants. And I'm really pro bodily autonomy for men and women.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think female genital mutilation or male genital mutilation should happen as a child. I believe that there should be consent.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started expressing views like that, the girls at my school, they straight up just started to bully me,
Mm-hmm.
and make fun of me. And my friend, or my boyfriend at the time, we would kind of point out these small inequalities that they weren't really paying attention to. And they would get really angry. Mm-hmm. They would be like, well, that's not what feminism is about. Feminism is about women. It's not about men. We don't care about men, is basically what they were telling me. And that just didn't sit right with me. And they even kind of spread around rumors that me and him were sexist against women. Mm-hmm. And we confronted this girl about it who, we considered a friend, who had heard that. And we were like, no, it's not about, being against women. It's just trying to make actual equality. And at the time we kind of called ourselves egalitarians. Mm-hmm. So when like, and there was the feminists that were there. They kind of overheard us talking to her, and they totally took over the conversation. And they were like, "Do you believe that women are people?" And we said yes. And they were like, "Well, then you're a feminist." And so we said, "Okay, well, do you believe men are people?" And they said, "Yeah, of course." And
Well,
we're
then
like,
you're an MRA, right?
"Yeah," and then
Yeah.
you're an activist. And they were like, "No, no, no, that's not how it works." So that was the start of when I really started researching, looking into YouTubers who were covering this kind of thing. And yeah, it all started from there. And I've always had a passion for justice and equality. And when I see that people are using that and saying, we're for equality, but actually discriminating against others, I'm like, nah, that's, I fight against that.
Yeah. Okay. And what are your thoughts on the patriarchy?
I will say the fact that the Barbie movie, I hate to bring this up, but the fact the Barbie movie was completely based on the fact that they were pushing that America is a patriarchy, that really bothered me because it tells women and girls that there's no opportunities, that we're stopped by these men, and that, and the glass ceiling and all this. And I'm like, that's really discouraging. Like, if you're really about girl power and feminism, you should be like, we can do anything, regardless of, men in our modern society. So I really don't like the idea of perpetuating that America is a patriarchy.
Okay. What are your thoughts on traditional gender roles?
Yeah, so I think traditional gender roles are there for a reason. I believe that biologically, men and women are different, obviously. And so it creates patterns, and women are naturally great mothers, great homemakers. That does not mean that every single person
Should be a mother, right? Yeah.
Right. So to me, I feel like, especially today, me personally, I kind of mix the roles. I'm a working woman and I like cooking at home. Like, there's so many different people and different, even biologically, some people have different levels of testosterone and estrogen. That's why we have alpha males and beta males, and, stuff like that. So I think that there's such a wide spectrum, and, they like to talk about the gender spectrum. So it's like, why can't we have, why can't they accept the idea that every person's different? And just because traditional gender roles might work for one couple doesn't mean that you have to go by that. So I think it's not as, like, I feel like they try to say that it's forced. And just because someone has an opinion, like, oh, go make me a sandwich, I don't think that, that should be taken seriously.
Okay. Historically, it probably was forced. Yeah, historically, it was forced. And it probably came from somewhere, I think. I think it came from somewhere, from nature and so on. Women had children. I don't know. They couldn't go to war or whatever. They couldn't do hard work because
of pregnancy. Yeah. So we've definitely come a long way. Right. That's for sure.
Okay. What are your thoughts on MRAs?
I will always support the men's rights community. I just hope that we can, actually come together and make a difference.
Okay, what are your thoughts on intersectionality? The idea that different groups in society have different issues. So like LGBT people are oppressed, like racism, if let's say the white person has it easier than the black, and so on and so on, and then it is the idea that there's a norm in society, and so the norm for sexuality would be heterosexual. There's a norm for,
Mhm.
so the norm for race would be white in English speaking society. The norm, they would say, for gender is male. So they're saying that they have the advantage. Males have the advantage, whites have the advantage, heterosexuals have the advantage of being seen as normal, and the people who are outside of that have problems, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So I do recognize the struggles
Mm-hmm.
of people who, in the LGBT community, minorities, disabled people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but then there's also, and there are, I think it's also a classism issue. And I don't think that that's talked about quite enough, because you can be white, male, cisgender, not really have,
Mm-hmm.
any disability or mental problems, but you
But
can
be really
still,
poor. Yeah.
yeah,
Just because you're poor. So yeah, money is a big, that is not always acknowledged. That's right. It's probably the biggest disadvantage that one can have globally, even
yeah,
today, would be to be really poor. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that there are very successful LGBT individuals, James Charles is on CoverGirl. We are embracing a lot of like diversity. Winnie Harlow, the girl who had vitiligo, she won the top model contest,
Mm-hmm.
and all that really, I think it really, emphasizes that it is like a class thing, because you can be elite and a woman, a minority, anything, and still be in the top,
Mm-hmm.
and then, like I said, you can be white, cis, male or female,
Mm-hmm.
and be at the bottom of the barrel. Also, due to like circumstances, if you're in a town where like drugs are a huge problem, like
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different factors
Mm-hmm.
that, again, it's just generalizing, I
Mm-hmm.
feel
Mm-hmm.
like.
Okay. Okay. So, what are your thoughts on gynocentrism? Like that the world inherently sort of revolves around women, and that everyone is biased towards women,
Hmm.
basically. Yeah.
So,
Maybe that, like, we have a biological imperative that sort of makes life easier for women, in that people feel sorry for women easier, or
mhm,
yeah.
yeah. So,
You think there's truth to
yeah,
it, or is it just a myth, or
right. A lot of men do want to protect women.
Mhm.
Um, and, but I feel like that's more, I don't think that that's necessarily a masculine issue. Like it's a trait that obviously stems from family values, I believe,
Mhm.
because if you want to protect your family,
Mhm.
you want to protect your woman. And, you know, the and chivalry has always been kind of a part of society, so I feel like there is some truth to it. It's like I go out of my way to, try and help women and men, but it's like men are obviously more inclined, I feel like, to be polite, extra um, chivalrous to
Mhm.
women. And I don't necessarily see that as a problem. I feel like it's more loving and compassionate than feminists try to push, if that makes sense.
Okay.